Hello and welcome to NOS Live, NOS Live. That is the Nerds on Site podcast here on youtube.com/nerds on site. I, as always, as every week, am your host, Will, and with me I have a fantastic panel of guests who we are going to introduce in just a few minutes. I would like to mention that this episode is sponsored by DNS Thingy, who we will be discussing a little later on in the show. And with that being said, I cannot wait to bring you this fantastic panel we've got today. So, newcomer to the podcast is our very good friend, Mark. Mark, say hello to the audience. Hello. So tell us, where are you located? What? Just a quick little tidbit about yourself. Fantastic. That's great. You probably get a nice cross section then. And we have a returning guest this time, coming from somewhere a little bit different than usual. Patrick, say hello. Okay, perfect. And now, with that being said, it looks as though YouTube is playing tricks on me. So we are going to be right back in just one moment, audience. Please don't go anywhere. We will see you in just a few minutes. Thanks so much for tuning in, and don't touch that browser. Hello, and welcome back to Nerds on Site Live, NOS Live, here on youtube.com/nerds on site. Thank you so much for joining us this night. We are here at 8 o'clock EST every single Wednesday night. And I just want to mention that this show is sponsored by DNS Thingy. We'll be talking a little bit more about them later on in the show. Next, I would like to introduce my fantastic panel that I have this week. We're going to start off with a guest new to the show. Mark, say hello. Say a few words to the audience.
Evening. I'm Mark Cassanto. I'm from the Ottawa Pod, and it's a big area, partly because I just live west of Ottawa in rural Ottawa Valley, and so I have quite a spread of rural and city clients.
Fantastic. And we have a amazing returning guest, Patrick. Say hello.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Patrick Suace. I'm from Lethbridge, Alberta. Lethbridge Pod. I've been a nerd for a year and 6 months, and glad to be here and having me back so quickly.
Of course. Well, we're always thrilled to have you back. We love our returning nerds every single time. And last but not least, you know him, you've seen him, he's been here every week. David, say hello to the audience.
I'm sorry that I have to keep on being here on repeat, but, I'm just glad to be here. This is an exciting time of the week, and very glad to have Mark Cassanto on here for the first time and to have you back, Patrick. Looking forward to today's dialogue. It's going to be a fight.
Absolutely. I mean, that's sort of one of the joys of these technical topics is people tend to have their very, very strong opinions. And, the joy is being able to discuss them in a civil manner, really get into the discussion without getting, in fisticuffs, as they say. So one thing that is a recurring segment in this show is a segment we like to call Are You Smarter Than a Nerd in 5th Grade? And the way this segment works is I'm going to read out a skill testing question to you, the audience. You, the audience, will respond in a message on YouTube. And if you are not signed into your YouTube account, make sure to just sign up in there. It doesn't take long. It's very easy. And if you don't have a YouTube account, you can just link your Google account. It is so quick, so easy, and you too have a chance to win the prize. All right. Now, let's see here. So, our skill testing question this week is a bit of a math question. I know some of you are experts on the subject. So, the math question for this week is, the year of the iPod Nano 6th generation release minus the year of Steve Jobs' birthday is what number? So if you know the answer to the question, type it in the chat room. And
you guys know John Harbranko always has to be at least 2 Google queries. Cannot do it in a single one.
Exactly. He wants to make it just a little bit extra challenging.
That's right. We are not going to be hacked as easily as HQ Live, let me tell you.
Exactly. We're going to make it tough for you. So once more, I'm going to repeat the question for anyone who might not have caught it that first time. So the question is, what is the year of the iPod Nano 6th generation release minus the year of Steve Jobs' birthday? So once again, if you know the answer, type that in the chat to the bottom right of your video. And without further ado, I'd like to sort of jump in and really, dive into some discussion specifically about one of the new faces on the show. So Mark Cassanto, he already said he's from the Ottawa pod. He's from a region in Canada here. And we'd just like to get him to talk a little bit about himself, a little bit about some of the work he's done recently, just some of what being a nerd is to him.
Well, thanks. I first had just a quick story that came to mind. I guess it happens after you have serviced someone for a long time. Have you ever had a situation where a customer of yours passes away? And I had one of my customers pass away, and I had been servicing them, I would say maybe 16, 17 years.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah, so I had a chance to meet other family members, and it was just quite gratifying to meet other people and a different perspective from what I saw from my client. And but there was no doubt that I wasn't going to attend. It was she meant more to me than just being a client. So I'm glad of that, and I'm glad of that experience. On another note, with the challenges of travel in my neck of the woods, my biggest hurdle is sometimes trying to book my clients, so I'm less globe hopping, because the territory I cover is approximately 150 kilometers west or east, and a little bit south. So I have to be careful sometimes, but sometimes with emergency calls, I have to literally travel 60 or 70 kilometers in between clients just to get to my next client. But I find in the long run, I do more remote calls where I can stop where I am in a car and put my iPad up to use, connect up, and solve the problem. So I try to alleviate the traveling when I can. But overall, one of the reasons why I have such a big area is because Ottawa just has one pod, and it used to have 3, I think. And when I came on board, I already had an existing business, which I'll talk later about. But my clients didn't move where I had to service them, and so my territory became bigger. So.
Understandable. So it ended up being a lot more far-reaching than maybe you initially anticipated.
That's right.
That's right. Well, that's good. That's good. So, with that being said, actually, the journey to becoming a nerd is something that is just, it's something that really we all have in common. Everybody at one point, came across this business, came across this force, really, and said, you know what? I want to be a nerd. I want to help people. I want to help people solve their problems. I want to make their lives better. I want to, work with them for years and years and really genuinely become, a colleague, a friend, etc. And one thing I really always want to make so clear to our viewers is that you too can become a nerd. And the way you do that is you go to www.iwanttobeanerd.com, and you can actually see the URL listed right below our faces here. And if you go to that website, you can find out a load of information about becoming a nerd. And one of the big things that we really want to sort of make a point of, really showcase, is the fact that going into business as a nerd is going into business for yourself, but not by yourself. You have all these fantastic people and so many others as a support system to people to work with, to bounce ideas off of, and to collaborate with. And one thing that I personally find absolutely fascinating is the journey that some of our nerds took initially to become that. So we're actually going to bounce it right back here to Mark. And Mark, tell us a little bit about your story. You mentioned you had a previous business, and then you transitioned into becoming a nerd. So sort of sketch out a little bit of that journey from, transitioning from the previous business into, some of the, maybe the things you expected, and then the things you didn't expect.
That's true. Well, and it is very true. The qualities or the lifestyle, the why we want to become a nerd, it started before I became a nerd, because my business was kind of like being my own nerd, but I wasn't labeled or branded a nerd. I was your computer guy, just quote, you're a computer guy. No official trademark or anything, but I was laid off in a job in 2003 and became my own boss and my own car. And I knew the niche to fill in the area. And after the first year and a half of really tugging it and getting things going, it just took off. And one of the reasons I think it took off, some of the reasons were if word of mouth cannot be solid, that means that your trustworthiness and your honesty and your integrity are in question usually. And for me, God has been good that way. And I make mistakes, but willing to admit them. But I've been able to create that trust and that, and a constant learning curve of being your own boss and working to build and fix computers and so forth. I already had started to find ways of recurring income as another way of just besides going to people's houses or businesses to fix. I had to find solutions to give them where I could keep revenue coming in. So Carbonite was one of them, and you guys, and with Nerds we use that too, so it was kind of good. Websites and all that kind of stuff as well. But the other, besides word of mouth, was absolutely integral for me, at least, was radio. And for me, I had great success in the market in the Ottawa Valley, because I didn't have to spend a fortune in the Ottawa proper with the big radio stations. I could keep it with the stations in the rural area. And it's my name and my voice is so much where if someone actually hasn't met me but has heard my ads, they'll look at me or hear me and they'll come up to me saying, I know your voice. So that's pretty cool. So coming into Nerds on Site was because I knew Wes. We worked kind of side by side. He's another nerd, and he's a pod leader in the Ottawa pod. And we really didn't consider each other competition per se, but I started pelting him with a few questions, and I had reached the limit of the minutia of trying to run my business in the back end and how much time it was taking, So the trade-offs or the blending of me becoming a nerd overall was an amazing thing. The absolute integrity and stellar leadership, and just the doors that have opened for technology solutions, knowledge base with amongst the nerds, feeling I've got my back covered, and feeling that when I do walk in the door, I'm walking in with a team and not just me. So it's not to say I'm a perfect salesman, but I come to the table with much more than I ever did, and I make that pretty clear in my ability to convince people, in all honesty and nothing pushy, of solutions and techniques that we need to apply. And I find that the only challenge sometimes is the world of I can't afford it. And the way I've been able to overcome that is simply by giving them multiple scenarios and how to proceed, not just one. And also with the history of how they heard from me, I tie in that to, yeah, it's worth doing or it's not worth. And I try very hard just to make it so that the money doesn't scare them away per se. We can always tie, or what do you call it, split the job up and do some of it now and some of it later. But and then finally, just to say, the only other challenge has been my attempts to find more business clients, because medium-sized businesses in this neck of the woods are not a plethora. There are lots of them, but not like the city. So things are opening up for me in the city. But ultimately, that's my focus in the next year or two, is to continue to grow my business, but particularly concentrating on medium business. So really great to be on board. And yeah.
Fantastic.
But Mark, you forgot that even more importantly than a nerd, you're a dad.
Oh, yes. I am a father of 8 children. Yes.
8.
Very
Wow.
proud.
Oh my
8
God.
kids on purpose.
Incredible.
Well, yeah, 7 on purpose, and 1 just had to sneak in there at the end. Yeah.
It's incredible. You could run 2 whole podcasts at the same time. There you go.
Yes. Well, thankfully, I have 3 that are adults, which is very good.
That helps.
Built-in babysitters, right? Big families are only big for a little while, and then the big ones help.
Exactly. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Mark, for sharing that fantastic story with us. That's honestly quite a journey, really, that you've already gone on and are still continuing on. That's the thing. It's like it never ends, does it? Until we retire, anyways. But that's down the road. That's down the road. So, without any further ado, we're going to jump into the main sort of like the meat of the show. And this is our main discussion panel, where we basically open everything up to the floor. We have a real like open-ended conversation and really just sort of like bounce ideas off of each other. And the subject matter for this week is the very tantalizing 3-word question: iPhone or Android? And I know we've got some serious opinions here. We're very fortunate to have a equally divided panel today. Patrick and Mark are iPhone users, and David and myself are using Android devices. So I'm actually going to let David sort of start this one off and just sort of launch into the discussion, if you will.
All right, folks. Do you want to be told how you can use a phone, or do you want to just author that yourself? Are you an entrepreneur, or do you like to be told by someone else what you want to do? Do you live in a free country, or are you restricted with your freedoms? Those are my first 3 questions. And based on how you answer them, you'll end up either with Android or Android.
Pretty much. Yeah, I think in addition to sort of like back that up, I come from an even more sort of unique perspective in that I used to be an iPhone user. Yeah, back in the day, I had a MacBook Pro and an iPhone 3GS, and I loved them both dearly. They were the best workhorses I could possibly have. And then around the end of the life cycle of my MacBook, I was like, oh, I don't really want to drop another $2,000 on a laptop that's probably going to go out on me in 2 years. So why don't I buy a PC again? I had PCs the whole time I was a kid. Time to get back on the wagon. And then as I had this PC, I was sitting there with my iPhone, and I'm like, well, iCloud doesn't really work very well anymore. I don't really need to use any of the networking functions. Why do I have this anymore? And then I went out and bought I think it was a Samsung. Or was it an LG? I don't remember. But anyways, I bought an Android phone shortly after the fact and never looked back. I don't miss my iPhone one bit.
Wow. So sorry, Patrick and Mark, but you weren't jumping in, and now you have to go on the defensive here.
Yeah. I've got to. I'll go first. I'm an iPhone 10 user now, and I am so quick with my fingers. I now sort of kind of know what the Android user might be familiar with, because when I pick up someone else's phone to configure email or something, I'm constantly swiping. I can't swipe. I got to hit the home. So, but I find these.
You see.
Okay, here we go.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Patrick.
First of all, David was right. It's either the iPhone way or the highway. Android users are the highway. For the fact that you can do whatever you want to in your phone. It's the Apple way, where you're not being told to per se, but it just makes it easier for you. Also, the one reason that I use iPhone as well, because most of my clients use Apple products. So in order for me to be able to recommend or suggest or give out information that will help them, then I have to be better at it. I have to be good at it. I tried using Android once, and I almost threw it outside the door. But
what can we say, Will?
it's
Some people just can't handle it. It's just too much for
It's
them.
true. You know what it is? The freedom. Freedom scares people. They
True.
need their wonderful
That's
narrow
true.
corridor. No, but it's true. Like the thing with the iPhone, and again, coming from the perspective of someone who has used both platforms and transitioned from one to the other, like the part of what really sold me on Android's system was that I felt a lot of the functionality that Apple had, you know, with its integration. Everything was integrated. That was the greatest part about it, and I still respect that component of the brand massively. It's brilliant. But with the especially with the advances Google has made, you can really do any sort of, like, all of my devices are essentially synced through Google now. And I find that a lot of those similar aspects that I would normally get through iCloud, through, you know, I'm probably behind on my Apple terminology, but all the stuff that used to be just instantly done through Apple, I can still instantly do it through the Android system. And to you know, hammer the point home, the main reason for my transition as well was that I was finding myself using a lot of third-party software. And something that I loved about Apple is they have amazing first-party support. Everything Apple works with everything else Apple. It's plug and play. You don't have to fight with it. But the minute you try to introduce something else that's not part of their ecosystem into the equation, all bets are off. It's tough to say what will and won't work. And so I found for myself, because I was using a lot of third-party software in the first place, might as well go with something that is sort of built around that open market.
Yeah.
You see, I'm with you, Will. I used iPhone, Apple product iPhone only for my phone, but for everything else I used PC. Right? It's well, a comic says one time that he likes using Apple products because it's super people friendly, and sometimes I'd like to think that way too, because it's easy to access to. But in this generation, I don't want to say there's a lot of stupid people, but there are people who like more user interface friendly device to be able to access whatever they need to access, which iPhone is more reliable on that part, because it's one click there, one click away, and people likes that.
Sounds like Marcos Santos agreeing with you.
Well, there's an elegance of Apple that it's and I must admit that I bought an iPad Pro when nerds became targeted by Apple to be partners, and it's my laptop now. And I just use a regular laptop if I have to troubleshoot routers, but I live and breathe on my iPad Pro for everything, including remoting to clients and working with Office 365 or whatever I'm doing. And I love my iPhone 10. There's just an elegance and a simpleness to it, and there's a clunkiness for some reason for me in an Android environment. I don't know.
Well, we obviously picked a very good topic, because if you've seen the chat room here,
Yeah.
There's obviously a strong opinions on from the Nerds on Site team. And yes, Marco, that was quite an interesting Samsung video. It made it all over into other tech videos. And Jim, I don't know. I was a huge BlackBerry fan in the old days. So the BlackBerry Hub I know is extremely compelling, and it's not something that exists anywhere else. So it makes sense that would be the one thing that would keep you. But I also can't let this go too far, Will. I purposefully said I'm an Android guy at the beginning of the show because we needed to make sure this panel was a little bit more balanced. But truth be told, this is an iPhone. So I'm sorry, Will. I'm sorry, but I try. And by the way, nerds need to be multilingual. When we're with Android people, we need to speak Android. And when we're with iPhone people, we need to speak iPhone, right? That's the truth.
I mean, that's the long and the short of it.
I actually learned more about Androids when I started working with it for the town Coldale. They have Android phones, and it's actually easier to manage, where you can track everyone. They have this Samsung IAEM something software where you can disable everything there. For example, they lost their passcode or all that. I can do that remotely from there, and it's it's convenient from that end. But like, well, David's right. We need to be multilingual, not only for iPhones or devices. Sometimes languages too is good to know one or more.
And I'm challenging myself to learn more of the BlackBerry interface that's happening now. That BlackBerry is not concentrating on hardware anymore. It's more of the using Android phones. So.
Absolutely. So what have you got shared with
No,
us
that's
here?
true. What I wanted to just make sure that everyone is aware of is that in the nerds world, mobile device management is an important piece of the management piece that you were talking about, Patrick. And what's nice about the Meraki solution is that it supports Mac, Windows, Android, and iOS all in one panel. So you can do things like resetting device and stuff like that. So I thought I'd quickly throw that up for a brief moment as well to remind everybody MDM is an important aspect of our business, mobile device management,
It's very good, David.
Yeah, it's a tremendous feature. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it seems as though we could probably, even though everybody has their preferences, everybody has their focuses. The truth of the matter is that it comes down to the consumer. And as nerds, the onus is on us to be able to support everything. As David put it so eloquently when he referred to it as being multilingual, it really is a tremendous thing because both platforms are here, neither one's going away, and everybody has their preference, but no one's intrinsically wrong. We all like to think that we are, but no one's exactly wrong.
No.
I say as the lone Android user here, so maybe I'm biased, but so with that being said, this is one of those discussions we could go on forever, but we are running a show here, and unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, the show must go on. Now, something I'd like to touch back on, actually, is regarding our question of the day, which has actually been correctly answered. That's right. Jim Humphrey has managed to get the successful answer to the question, and I'm going to repeat the question here, and then I will provide the answer. 1 second here. All right, so the question was, for anyone who missed it earlier in the show, what is the year of the iPod Nano 6th generation release minus the year of Steve Jobs' birthday? And
all in one Google search.
All in one Google search. If you just type that whole sentence in, you'll get it all in one. And let me just double check here. So the answer is 54. And so, Jim, we'll be contacting you to determine the details. As my notes actually had the wrong number in there, so Jim actually managed to one-up us by getting the correct answer, even beyond the correct answer. So, well done, Jim. We'll be speaking to you a little bit later regarding your prize. And, exactly.
There you go, Jim.
Well done. And actually, no time like the present. So, what we'll do is earlier in the show, I mentioned that we are in fact sponsored by DNS Thingy, and the prize is a little bit related to that. So, David, tell us a little bit about the prize.
I did love to. Oh, I'm showing you the wrong window. No, am I showing the right window?
You're on the right spot.
Oh, okay. I thought I had the show notes showing. That's not a big deal. Anyway, DNS Thingy is designed to give the owner of an internet connection the freedom to shape the traffic, meaning that you can decide which device can do what, put on a schedule, decide whether YouTube is put on safety mode and moderate or strict mode, decide if Google and Bing Safe Search is enforced or not, and even prevent 100% of circumvention methods, including Siphon, PSIPHON, which is traditionally a very difficult circumvention tool to block. Well, we do. So anyway, take a look. And Jim Humphrey, congrats. You are getting one of these routers for free. It's an Asus RTN66U router. So congrats again. It includes our software and gets perpetual updates for the life of the product.
Fantastic. You really don't get a better deal than that at a better price than that. That is about the best it comes in the business, let me tell you. And so with that being said, we have probably, I've talked about it before, and I say it every time, but it's so true, my absolute favorite segment of the show. This is our segment we like to call Tip of the Week. And this is where one of our nerds on the show, one of our panelists, will come in with a tip, a trick, advice. And what it's going to do is basically sort of showcase a little hidden talent that you might not know. And the one sharing the tip of the week with us this week is our good friend Patrick. So Patrick, share with us your tip.
Well, this is not a techie tip of the week. It is more on a tip in order for you to be able to run your business properly for Nerds on Site. Now, I learned this from a very good mentor. His name is Jonathan Arnold Dusen. Give yourself a break. Have yourself a Kit Kat. In order for you to be able to run your business properly, you need to have your brain to relax, not just work, or building the business all the time. You need to breathe some fresh air. You need to be able to go out there and say, I don't have to stress for this week. I'll be right back. It makes you motivated in order for you to be able to go back to work, and you tell yourself, oh, I didn't do some billings this month. I wanna do more. I wanna be eager to go out there and to be able to help clients and build a business, right? And it's good in a way that, how do I word this? Your clients misses you. Your clients realize your worth when you're gone. They realize that when you're actually not around, their tech life is much harder than they thought. Because one client mentioned that, we pay you this, but you're not always around. But if you're around, actually, our life is much more easier. It's very motivational per se.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's great, Patrick. All I heard is Kit Kat. Hey, Ruben, my son, I need one of your Kit Kats, please. That's a great idea.
I was just about to say, like, despite the analogy, we are not sponsored by Nestle.
No.
Nestle, if you're listening, we're open to it, though. With that being said, though, unfortunately, we do have to wrap up the end of this show. We've had a fantastic discussion here. And again, in the comments of the show, if you're watching this after the fact, tell us what you like. Are you an iPhone user? Are you an Android user? Why? I really want to know. I genuinely, really, really do. And so I would like to thank my panel here, my amazing panel, Mark, Patrick, David, and a special thanks to sort of the woman behind the scenes, Becky. She handles so much of the back end for this show, and really she is sort of one of the huge rocks that keeps this thing coming out every single week. So tremendous thanks to Becky as well. And so from myself, David, Mark, and Patrick, we thank you so much for coming and spending this half hour with us, and we look forward to seeing you next week, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, youtube.com/nerdsonsite. Bye, everyone.
See you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me. See you.